me wanna. We are currently in white settlement. Yes, it sounds exactly like what you think. The settlement of the whites. Now, the history of white settlement is very wild, but we're going to get into that a little bit later on because right now I'm currently at their city museum because I want to see if they're telling the truth. It says the people from white settlement began having problems with some of the Indians and asked for federal government protection or to provide protection. I was wondering, like, what type of problems were they having?
It's difficult to track down exactly what the problems were because the problems seemed to be that certain tribes of Indians would raid.
Okay, y'all, we're back. And that museum just make me want to... Not because of the lady, but really just because of the history. So let's get into it. Number one, when you first walk into the museum, the first thing that you see is a peace treaty. And that was especially interesting to me because Tarrant County was named after a man who was part of a group who attacked Native Americans in that area and forced them to move further out west. And the museum essentially paints a narrative that the white settlement area and surrounding areas of Fort Worth as we know it today was built up majority by white settlers. Which we know isn't true because those white settlers also brought enslaved people with them.
Slaves were property. And
do you guys have any documentation of the enslaved people?
No, we've got at least two people we know who were ex-slaves.
Okay.
And they're George White and Elijah Haywood.
Yeah. George White and Elijah Haywood. Yeah. So you know me, I had to ask, where is that part of history that speaks to the reality of black folks in that area during that time period? The history of black people and black residents within white settlement is largely unwritten. Basically, it wasn't even documented. She could only give me the names of 2 Afro-Americans who actually owned land within white settlement.
Owned land that was recorded in Tarrant County and Texas records.
So the man who was formerly enslaved,
both of them would have owned land. No, there may be others, we just have not researched.
But that's as far as the documentation went. So I started to dig a little bit deeper because once we got to the part of the museum that was about the school system, the education boards, I began to ask, where were the black children? Where were the black people? And she told me there was a black school within white settlement. So I can imagine the schools are probably segregated, right? The schools were? Like what were black children able to go to these schools, or did they have to go somewhere else in Texas?
In the early years, we found that there was actually a black school, and we haven't been able to find the footprint of it.
But now they have no documentation, and they don't even know where that school was really even located. And it doesn't stop there. In 2019, they proposed to change the name of white settlement, but voters showed up and they said no, and they rejected it by a 9-1 margin. They wanted to keep the name of white settlement, the settlement of the whites. And I did all of this to show us just how detrimental it is when descendants of enslaved people or enslaved people in America's stories and lived experiences within history are conveniently left out. Because once that's done, it creates this chain effect to justify and suppress the truth, which then disconnects the requirement for justice and true accountability.